Thank you very much. And also, thank you for having me over here among so many friends. Yes, I think you're right. I think back at the time, TAP was considered a bit of a dark horse in that race. But of course, there were many of us that really believed in that project. Not least our shareholders in TAP from many world-leading companies. I haven't commented on this in a public forum, but for me it was also quite personal. Many of you know that I have a Greek blood running in my veins, so this was an opportunity to really put our back in for the country. And I think we did. I mean, the answer to the question, how did we do it, I think lies to a very large extent in the definition of we. And I think the key word here is collaboration. We set up a very intense collaboration with our partners in the Hellenic Republic. There were intergovernmental agreements concluded. There was a host government agreement concluded. We put the right elements in place. And I think this is really what was the success story. I think actually the collaboration that we have had and continue to have today is really what made TAP successful in the selection for the European leg of the Southern Gas Corridor, but also underpins very much the success that we're having today in actually constructing the pipeline.
Could you tell me why is TAP good for Greece and it should not be considered as a business as usual project?
If you give me the opportunity, I could probably sit here for the rest of the day and tell you why TAP is good for Greece. And I'll also point out that why would it not be considered business as usual? Actually, I think that business as usual is also good for Greece. Business is good for Greece. We are a business which I think is good for Greece on a number of different levels and dimensions. So let me just briefly go through a few of them. As you referred to in your opening remarks, this is a huge endeavor realizing the Southern Gas Corridor. When Greece won the selection and when the Greek route was selected, this puts Greece in a very important, if not a protagonist position in one of the biggest strategic energy endeavors. So it is good for Greece in the sense that it places Greece right in the heart of the European energy strategy. Greece has undergone a period of very difficult years that has dented confidence in Greece. I think that the fact that TAP and its major international shareholders have always exhibited an absolute comfort and belief in Greece as the best option, as a strong partner, plays very much to the investor confidence in Greece. I think those are immediate, let's call them maybe geostrategic elements to why TAP is important for Greece. If you look at the national level, it is good for Greece because, of course, it is a huge project. It is a major endeavor. It generates tax revenues. It generates job. Today, as we are speaking, we have 2,000 people actually out building the TAP project. It also has indirect elements. We're constructing 550 kilometers in Greece. It will come as no surprise to anybody that you will find an awful lot of archaeological and cultural heritage elements. So during the period of our project, we will expect to have hundreds of people working also on these elements of the project. So there's also an indirect spillover effect of the benefits. If you go down even further, regionally, we have had some very exciting visions presented in the previous panel about the future that Greece will play here. We act as an enabler to much of this, growing the Greek gas market. This will have a big importance, and all the way down to the municipal and the individual level, where we are working today very actively with governors, with mayors, with local communities, also with a view to rolling out our community investment program. So I think for me what's quite essential is of course what we do, but also how we choose to do this.
We have been talking over the last few years about your excuse me. He's a good speaker, so so we have been talking a lot over the last few years about your community approach. What you said about, you know, approaching governors, municipalities, etc. Could you enlighten us a bit on how does this work?
Look, I'm a very firm believer in the notion of a value proposition. Our pipeline in Greece is 550 kilometers. So that makes Greece the biggest geography for TAP. 550 kilometers of pipeline construction also means that we have approximately 14,000 affected landowners and land users. It also means that we are going through 100 communities. We're going through 30 municipalities. Our view is that, of course, we have a big impact, as often discussed, in the geostrategic and the national element. But if we want to hold true to the notion of the value proposition, we need to make sure that we also take into full consideration those communities. And there are two elements to those communities. One element is, this is a major project, so what is going to happen to me in my community? What's going to happen to me as a landowner? So there is a lot of effort into actually stepping up and relating to all that. We have done by now almost 1,000 meetings in all these localities, inviting all the community citizens to explain what are we doing, how are we doing it, when will we do this, and why are we doing it. And I think this is very important for us, and this is why we are also having had an incredibly successful interaction with the communities. And the other element is, of course, that we need to make sure that some of the benefits here that is generated by this major project is transferred into these communities. There will be a lot of benefits, as we have already discussed, in terms of job creation, enabling the growth of the Greek gas market, etc. But also directly, what we have done, we have dedicated a significant investment, 32 million euros, which we are looking at also invest from our end directly and in collaboration with the local communities to understand what are their needs, aspirations, and what can we do as part of that community, because this is how we want to see ourselves as a part of the community, to actually respond to that. And that's been a fantastic journey, and it's of course now ongoing during the next couple of years as we're implementing the project.
I guess, though, that as far as Greece is a country which loves opposition, you definitely had some opposition during the project. I've heard a lot of complaints from people from the area of Kavala. There are concerns about the safety, etc. How do you respond to these people? And what do you do for their concerns?
Well, I think the response is exactly where we started. It's about dialogue and about collaboration. Look, if you are a farmer along the route and you may have been afflicted by difficult times, you may be on the margin, and there is a very big project that is going to come in and it may affect your fields, I think it's quite natural that you may have some concerns. What is this going to mean for me? We need to understand that. And the best way to address this is to sit down and have those dialogues. And this is why we're putting so much emphasis on the importance of having those kinds of discussions. Yes, some of them have been heated, but in my experience, they have always ended in a very good place. What do? I explain to them what we're doing, how we're doing it, and most importantly, rather than just explaining, I try to listen. Now, what many people do not know is that during the design phase of the pipeline, we did a number of reroutings. Some of them were big, but many of them were also smaller. I think we did more than 120 route adjustments after having had dialogue with people who came, and this may sound strange in such a geostrategic project, but people who said, I'm actually planning to do a well here. Will there be any chance to maybe go 100 meters north of here or 100 meters south of here? And during that phase, now it's of course different, but during that phase, the design phase, we actually tried to accommodate as much of this as possible, and we did a number of these changes. So I think that dialogue, a willingness to listen is really what has been the success. And this continues.
You mentioned geostrategy, so I want to jump briefly from the local to geostrategic. We know that TAP is the realization of the Southern Gas Corridor, but lately we heard news that Gazprom, the Russians, have the idea to deliver Russian gas using TAP. Would you enlighten us a bit on this, if it can be done?
Yeah, the answer to this is very simple. The TAP pipeline, we're building a pipeline in Europe. This means that we, of course, have to operate under national as well as European law. So who can have access to European infrastructure is set out by the European laws. In this particular case, the rules which govern what's called third-party access. So there is actually European law that dictates how third parties can get access to existing infrastructure, and these are the rules that we all have to comply with.
Mm-hmm. So my last question is, you mentioned in the beginning that Greek blood runs in your veins. So you know that Greeks like to talk about legacy. What is the legacy of TAP? What do you want to leave behind?
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said that, because now I'm going to hear about this for 1,000,000 times. Look, I probably would like to kind of cut that question in two parts. I think one part is what we are leaving behind. And what we're leaving behind is a major project. I'm not going to reiterate my first point, but I think it's a major project which sends a signal that Greece is an investment location where you can be hugely successful. Most of our partners in Greece are Greek companies. It's a project which enables a number of additional spin-offs, many visions that we've heard today, IGB, the new LNG facilities, the Ionian Adriatic pipeline, etc. So I think this is addressing the what are we leaving behind. But of course, what I would really hope as well, having conducted the biggest environmental and social impact assessment that I think has ever been done in Greece, having devised in partnership with the Hellenic Republic a land program which has had us sit down and have 45,000 individual conversations with affected landowners, making sure that we're compensating them fairly and well, and try to do so before we start construction. I think the second element is how we have done this. So if I and TAP have played a role in maybe pushing the boundaries a little bit further for how you can implement a project of this geostrategic and national magnitude in a way that still maintains, a real focused cognizance of all the individuals that you're also going to have to collaborate with, that would be something that we would be immensely proud about. And I think that's really the legacy that we would like to leave behind.
Okay, so Mr. Scoufias, dear Rikard, thank you very much for this interview.